Hey guys, welcome back to Steel City Sports. So today I'm going to be talking about last night's Thursday night football game between the Washington Commanders and the Philadelphia Eagles. Didn't turn out to be that great of a game, not as good as I thought it could be, but we still have a lot to talk about coming out of this game, and I think the biggest takeaway is Saquon Barkley. We have to sing his praises. Saquon Barkley has been unstoppable this season. I really think the Offensive Player of the Year award has become a two-man race between Saquon and Derrick Henry. It's really going to come down to one of those two guys. I honestly even think that Saquon Barkley deserves to be in the MVP conversation. I know they don't give MVP awards out to running backs, but he at least deserves to be in the conversation, not only for his statistical numbers. I mean, he's having a phenomenal year. In 10 games, he has already over 1,000 yards at 1,137, also has 8 touchdowns. So he's averaging well over 100 yards a game. He's averaging almost a touchdown a game. But so that's great on its own, the statistical part of his argument for MVP. But also, when you looked at how he's changed just the overall dynamic of the Philadelphia Eagles, who have, in the Jalen Hurts era, already been a pretty good offense. You know, they got to a Super Bowl a couple years ago. He's completely changed the complexity of this offense. He's taken all the pressure off of Jalen Hurts. And we talked about when Jalen was struggling earlier in the year. I think a large part of that had to do with his weapons, and I think that the offense really lived or died by Saquon earlier in the year. Now that Jalen's got his weapons back and Saquon is playing at this level, they don't really ask Jalen to do a whole lot, and I think that was on display in this game. I think Jalen's played really well over the past couple of games. He didn't exactly wow me in this one. He wasn't terrible. You know, he had 221 yards, didn't throw any picks, didn't throw any touchdowns. He had a tush-push touchdown, obviously. But Jalen wasn't really asked to do a whole lot in this game because Saquon really took over this game in the later portion. Obviously every play you're trying to score a touchdown, but it felt like on the plays where Saquon scored, they weren't even really trying to get a touchdown. It felt like they were just trying to chew clock. Like they had a slight lead at the end of the game. There was still some time on the clock. It felt like they were just trying to methodically run out the clock towards the end. But Saquon is just such a freak that he gets these 2 late-game touchdowns because he just breaks a million tackles and runs down there. If I didn't say already, he finished the game with 146 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's incredible. I really, really do think he deserves to be in the MVP conversation. He obviously won't get it because he plays the wrong position. I hate that that's a thing in the NFL where only quarterbacks get the award, but that's just kind of the reality. But he is having an MVP-level season. The way he has changed this Philadelphia team, he's incredible. But I also want to talk about some of the takeaways for Washington coming out of this game. They obviously lost this game. The biggest takeaway for me for Washington is Jayden Daniels is a little off right now, and I think that is understandable for a couple of reasons. Number one, this guy is a rookie. We all just penciled him in as a top 10 guy, and I still think he is that. One bad game against the Eagles does not change that for me. And, when you look at Jayden Daniels' numbers here for that game, he had 191 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, 22 of 32 on his throws. These numbers are definitely inflated. If you watch that game, you know what I'm talking about. That final drive to end off the game from Jayden where he threw the touchdown to Zach Ertz, that was all in garbage time. That was all at the end of the game whenever all the pressure was off both the teams. So those numbers, they aren't even that great, but they don't even reflect how Jayden was really playing this game. He was really, when it mattered, he really only threw 120 yards, an interception, no touchdowns. He was just off in this game, and that's fine. He's played at an elite level. It's okay if he has these kind of games. It happens to everybody. Happens to Brady. It happened to Peyton Manning. Great quarterbacks are going to have bad games every once in a while. We always see it. So I'm not acting like I'm hitting the panic button on Jayden Daniels, but it's clear he needs some rest. He plays a physical style of football. He's asked to do a lot within this Washington offense, so he just needs to rest. I think his hand was fucked up. They kept talking about that on the broadcast, his fingers are damaged. I don't know if they're broken or whatever, but his hand's kind of messed up. He obviously had that injury against Carolina, so he just needs to go sit in a bed for a while and rest up, recuperate his body, and he'll be fine going forward. I also wanted to talk about really quickly, Dan Quinn had a really, really boneheaded decision in this game. There was a point, I believe it was in the fourth quarter, where the score was Eagles 12, Commanders 10. The Commanders were down the field in Philly territory. They were well within field goal range, and they decided to go for it on like 4th and 1 or something. And it's like, what the fuck are you doing? Like, in this type of a game, where up to that point was a low-scoring game, it was a defensive-oriented game. What are they thinking? Like, you can take the lead right here. Your defense was playing pretty good up until that point. I really, really don't get this. And I'm all for being aggressive, but it has to make sense within the context of the game. You know, you can't just... That's not how the world works, where you just have your game plan. If your game plan is, hey, I'm aggressive, I'm going for it on 4th, that's okay. But in the matter of the outcome throughout a game, like, you have to be able to adjust. And so if Dan Quinn's philosophy is I'm aggressive, I'm going for it, that's fine. But if you're in this style of a game that's low scoring, your offense, your quarterback has really struggled in this game, your defense has been playing pretty good, and you have a chance to take the lead with a field goal, you have to fucking take the points. That was an unacceptable decision from Dan Quinn. I always get those two names mixed up. Dan Quinn. Although in this context, it kind of makes sense to mix him up with Dan Campbell because that's another guy who loves to go for it. But anyways, that kind of costed the Commanders this game because after they missed that conversion, turnover on downs, Eagles went down and got a Saquon. I can't remember if that was a Saquon touchdown or the tush push, but the Eagles did score right after that, and that was kind of the game. After that, the momentum completely left the Commanders' side. The Eagles just went on to put up an avalanche, and like I said, the last points the Commanders put up was in garbage time. You know, that touchdown and the 2-point conversion. So the score makes this game look a lot closer than it was, 26-18. In reality, this game was 26-10. So this really was a beatdown of the Eagles. And my 3 big takeaways, I'll go over them real quick just to summarize this. Jayden Daniels needs rest. He's been playing really great football, really physical football. He just needs to rest over this long break because they're going into a bye, I'm pretty sure. So they'll have a long period for Jayden to get right. So that's my first takeaway. Number 2 takeaway was Saquon. Like I said, we need to start putting him in the MVP race because he's been fucking incredible this year. And my number 3 takeaway is the Eagles' defense, I think, is starting to arrive. We know that on paper, the Eagles have a lot of talent on their defensive roster. They've been disappointing this year to start off, but I think they're finally coming around. With Vic Fangio as the coordinator, we know he's one of the best defensive guys in the league. They've invested a lot of draft capital in that defensive line with the Georgia guys. I think you're now starting to see that pay off, and their D-line was really, really productive in this game against Jayden Daniels, especially on that, like we just talked about, that big 4th down where they went for it. It was because their defensive line got the big stop, and they were clobbering them the whole game. So that was kind of my takeaway from this game. If you watched this game last night, definitely let me know all your thoughts down in the comments. And if you made it this far, appreciate you watching. Please like and subscribe.